I am now going to pass over most ably to Christine, who is going to thump me. But as well as that, she's going to do an excellent job at cutting out. This task she said she'd never, ever, 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 ever do again. Ever.
I did.
But she's doing it now.
Yeah.
Have a microphone.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting to be doing anything today. And so I didn't prepare anything. But I do always on my keyring have a little USB stick that sometimes has some old lectures on. So here is a cutout. I'm going to put underneath this image a coloured layer. So I'm just going to choose a solid coloured layer. And I'm just going to pick just a grey, and I'm going to drag that, get hold of the layer, and I'm going to drag it underneath the picture. And so then if we come in closely, we'll see how imperfect that cutout really is. But if you're going to put a background that's got any mid-tones in it, which they often do, then an imperfect cutout will sometimes look like a perfect cutout, because those little bits of semi-transparent grey will just actually disappear into the background. So you don't have to worry about getting every single hair perfect. I'm going to disable that. You can see the original picture. So just something that I would say, if you know you're going to take a picture that is going to be cut out, then the best way to go about it first is to ensure that the background that you choose to photograph the subject against is a contrast with the hair. Because the hardest ones are when you go to Whitby, to the Goth Festival, and you see a fabulous girl with dark hair and she's standing in a black hole, and you take a picture of her and there is no contrast. And for cutting out, you need contrast. And the contrast can come in different ways. And Gary was mentioning earlier, it can be colour contrast. So you can pick the colour range, you can make a selection based on colour range, or you can make a selection based on the three colours channels, because often one of the channels has more contrast in it than the other channel. So you can use a channel to form the basis of your selection. I don't these days use either of those methods. I used to use them a lot, because with every cutout you need to choose the best method for that cutout. And sometimes it's a combination of different methods, and you will do a combination on different layers and then blend those different masks that you've made together to make a single mask. But the way that Photoshop has developed over the years, if you have a modern version of Photoshop, then it's not too difficult usually to do a cutout. And so I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to get rid of the mask on there, and I'm going to make this a different colour so that we can definitely see what I've got underneath the picture when I do the cutout. So when I took this picture, I changed from my usual dark brown background to this mid-bluey grey one. And this has given me a reasonable amount of contrast all the way around the head. So this is what I'm looking for. And obviously there's different ways you can do it. You can light the hair, you can light the background, you can do all sorts of things at the taking stage. And I'm sure that Gavin, can help with that when you're doing headshots next week about different ways of lighting. This is quite a simple lighting setup. It's just one main light, and you can see that. If you look in the pupils, you can see way up there is a roundish softbox. It's actually a beauty dish, and there's probably there's a reflector down on the right-hand side, but I've not lit the hair. So how you choose your image to cut out is vital to start with. Start off without hair. Start off men with hats is great.
Hats, bald heads.
Hats,
no beard.
bald heads, no beards. Fantastic cutouts. Much easier to cut out. So just going to get rid of that other one underneath the red. So all I've got here is the red switched on, and when we make the background transparent, you'll see the red coming through it. So I usually start with a select subject. There's the selection tools have got so much more effective. So you can select a focus area. Sometimes that helps because the hair will be in focus and the background out of focus. So that's one way you can choose to select. You can select the colour range because, say, she's got this golden hair and the background's blue. There will be a difference in colours there. You can select a sky which is intended for a landscape, or you can select subject. And generally speaking, when it's a figure against a plain background, select subject works quite well. And so that's what I'm going to do. You're still awake, Wendy? Good. Okay. And it's really quite good compared to how it used to be. How many people have done this? How many people have not done this? Oh, okay. So I'm talking to the ones who haven't done it. You've done it once. Okay. So we've got to this point where if we have a look around the harder parts of the image, you'll see there's quite a good cutout around the harder edges, except I've just noticed over here where the shadow here on the garment is almost the same tone as the background. So when I'm doing a cutout, the first thing I do before I even worry about the hair, because the hair is going to be the nightmare, I'm going to add a little bit into my selection by selecting this little bit of grey here. Let's make it a bit bigger so you can see it. The selection is pretty hard-edged at the moment. I'm going to pick up, you could do it with whatever tool you're happiest with, but I'm just going to use a lasso tool here. And I'm going to just, I'm going to just add a little bit to my selection. So as simple as that. I'd forgotten to click right up at the top left-hand corner. There is the single select or the add to selection. Since I already had a selection, if I tick on that add to selection, then when I select with that lasso, it will add the bit on. I'm just going to try and add a bit more here. It's a little bit awkward because I'm sliding all over the table, but that gets in the rest of that shoulder. And so we'll have a look all the way around, and you can see that it's made a pretty good stab at doing the hair, but the hair isn't very sharp because I've got quite a shallow depth of field. So the face is sharp, but the hair, because it's further back, isn't quite as sharp. And so that's going to be a little bit problematic. So again, if your hair is sharp, if you know that you want your hair very sharp, then do that at the taking stage, because then you're going to help yourself in your selection. I know that I'm waffling, but these things are important. What you do before you start the cutout is just as important as what you do when you're doing the cutout. And this one isn't ideal. But anyway, we've got that. And so now we can put a mask on. So the mask icon is down at the bottom of the palette. It's this rectangle with the circle in, and I click that and it's put the mask on. So now we've masked out the background, and you can see underneath the red area that is showing through. And now we can see how good or bad this hair cutout is. And actually, it's not all that bad, because as I say, if you're going to use a new background that's got some midtones in it, which they often are, a lot of these wispy bits of grey will just disappear and you will see the hairs showing through. However, we're going to try to improve on it if we can. And so I'm going to double click on the mask, and I'm going to go into the select and mask dialog. So I just double clicked on the mask to go in there. There is a little button up here right at the top called Refine Hair. This was something that was put in new a few versions ago. You're looking? No. Well, it's really, really important to click that. Okay. And actually, it's so easy not to see it. But it came in, I think, 3 or 4 versions ago. I don't know exactly when. But click on that, and it tries to refine the hair. Now, because the mask that it's showing is actually red, I'm going to change the background colour that I've got in to green, and then we're not getting too confused. This is just so that I can see it on a new background when I'm working. So if we go back into Select and Mask again, and we make sure Refine Hair is ticked. Now, you don't know what it's doing in the background, but don't look bad to me. How does that look to you? Doesn't look bad to me. I'm going to say OK to that. And I'm going to change the background colour again. I do this quite a lot. I look at it against different colours just to see how good or how bad my selection is. Oops, Daisy. And you can see it's definitely not perfect up here, because you can see there's definitely some green showing through here. Where a head should be. Yeah, okay. So if we go back in there, what we can do is refine the mask. And so we can pick up one of these brushes. If you hover over them, this is a quick selection tool. It just allows you to select in the normal way. This is the Refine Edge brush tool, the second one down, and this one is a brush tool. With the brush tool, you can add or take away using these plus or minuses on the top row. But we'll start off trying with the Refine Edge brush tool. It's pretty much an iterative process. You're putting things in, taking them out until you're satisfied you've got where you want to be. So the idea is you brush along the edge. Nothing's happening at all. Let's try sample all layers. Nothing's happening at all with that.
That's what I have.
Nothing's happening at all. The idea is that as you brush along, it does try to improve things. Now, maybe it's not improving things because it thinks it's done the best it can already, you know. Yes, that's done something, hasn't it? So this is pretty hard edged, but you can see that it's bringing a bit of hair back in. No, you can't soften the edge with this brush. This is a brush which works on a diameter rather than on a softening. But this other brush here is the one where you can actually put bits back in. Again, you're not softening with it. It's just an add or subtract brush. There's no softening on those. But we can see now that I'm actually putting back a bit of that edge, and I'm trying to keep within the edge, where you've got little feathery bits of hair coming out of the edge. You don't want to brush over those again because those are already softened. And as you go around, I mean, that looks pretty darn good to me. You know, it has improved so much since, but the important one is to click on that refined hair, and then I've just put a bit of the crown back in where it had bitten too much out of the crown, and I would just say okay to that, and then you can see what a mess it is. So once you've done that, now you can go in with your softening brushes. So you can go in with a normal brush and you can change the opacity of it, and you can make sure it's a soft brush. It's a soft brush. And then you can, hopefully, yeah, paint in and out of that edge. Let's go back a bit. And what I'm doing is I'm using the X key to change from add to subtract. And you can just kind of soften that manually along there. And it's always going to be a compromise when you get to doing it manually, because you can spend ages on it. But you want to just make sure that there's no discontinuities and change the opacity. Just get that slightly soft edge. I mean, I would now probably spend another half hour on this, but I think for the purpose of a demonstration, you're on a hiding to nothing once you start doing the refinements live. But I think you should have got the idea about this, that you can refine it on the mask, either here, directly on the layer, or within that refine edge dialogue. The refine edge dialogue is the one that has the magic look for the hair and choose the hair. Now then, if I turn that off now and I find a background, where will I find a background, Mike? In Bridge?
Yeah, looking bridge, there'll be something there.
There's a church. Let's have a church. This is architectural record.
With the person in.
I'm just going to, you know, it's not the right background. It's just the first background that I found. But I'm just going to put this in behind her, so that you can see.
Could you just do that step again? Because I seem to struggle adding the backgrounds.
Just do what again?
Where you-
Just, yeah, I'll do it in a moment,
Yeah,
Peter.
yeah.
I just want to, you know, to say, if you now look at this against a background, particularly down here, down the side of the hair, where it was just showing some grey of the original background through, it actually looks like a perfect extraction. And the place that it's not as ideal is on the top of the head, where it needs a little bit more work. And what I often will do is I will paint the odd hair in, just to give a little bit of softness to the edge, if I can't actually make it completely work. But if you look all the way down here, some other things you can do is, for example, I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to make it a colour layer. So in the blending mode, I'm going to colour, and I'm going to pick up the colour of the background. And then on the colour layer, I'm just going to paint along the edge of her hair with the same colour as the background. and that will completely hide any changes in colour and tone. Does that make sense? Yeah, I will drag a background in for you. And you know, you can go around, and if you think there's a little bit of grey showing through, just paint the colour on a new layer in colour mode. When you blend in colour mode, all it does, it changes the colours of the pixels. It doesn't put down splodges of paint as such. It just changes the colour of where you're painting. So again, perhaps round the top of her head here, I'll pick up a little bit of brown from that vaulting and pick up a brush with that colour and then just paint around the colour around her hair.
Are you choosing the hard and the soft brush?
I'm using a soft brush. I almost
How do you get the soft rather than the hard?
okay, in the brush palette up here, you've got the hardness of the brush, and 0% is soft and 100% is hard. I tend to use, because I'm painting, I tend to use soft brushes for this. You can use different shape brushes. I'm obviously doing the quickest thing here for today, but once you start painting that colour onto that edge of the hair, look how it's blending it in. And so I would say that's a fairly adequate cutout in not very long. And if you spend a bit longer on it, then you can refine it more. So I'm going to get rid of that background.
Christine, on the new version, when you go to the lasso tool and you go up to the top,
Yeah.
where it says select subject,
Yeah.
you can either select it on the machine or on the cloud. And
Yeah.
if you do it on the cloud, that gives you a better selection.
Right.
It doesn't save it on the cloud, it just renders it up there.
Yeah.
And then sends it back down to the machine and you get a better selection.
Very good. I'm hoping when I get my new computer, it'll run the new version. Well, I've been having a new one for 3 years, but because the one I've got is 15 years old now and barely wants to get cranked up in the morning, I've got the case for it, and it's a start. I've got the case to put the bits in. So Peter, I'm going to turn off that bit of that layer where I've coloured the hair, and I'm going to throw away that background. And you want me to put a different background in. So I'm going to see what Mike
Be the
has.
same one, I don't mind.
No, we'll have something different. This one, shall we have that one? Right.
Because it opens on its own there, doesn't it?
It's opening, yeah. I'm just going to open it. And then you're going to choose the move tool
Right.
when it's opened. Here it comes. Okay. Now, there's lots of ways to do this, and I'm going to do the way that you can see what I'm doing easiest. So I'm going to keep them as 2 separate layers like that. So you see both.
Yeah.
So I've got the thumbnail here, and I'm picking the move tool, which is right at the top, and I'm going to hold the shift down. The reason I'm holding the shift down is that when I move that image into the new one, it will sit in the middle. It will just plonk it down right central.
Right.
And then I can move it where I want.
Yeah.
So holding the shift down, I'm going to do it by grabbing the, I'm going to grab the thumbnail, and then I'm going to hover over the other picture and just drop it in. Are you sure you want to convert the colours? Yes, just do it. Okay, so there it is. Perspective not too bad, actually. So once it's in there, it will drop it on the next level up. So as I had the coloured layer, I think it was, selected, it dropped it on top of that. But you can obviously, once you've put it in, you can move it up or down. You can move it with respect to the other. And that, of course, will affect the way that the 2 layers work together in terms of the perspective matching. Okay,
Yeah, that was the simplest.
simple as that. Yeah. I think I've done, Michael. Please.
Shadows and
I can't put a shadow on this
No,
because
no, you can't.
shadows, it's like, it's a whole lesson. It's an hour and a half teaching you to make shadows. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, shadows are very difficult. Thank you, Christine, for that.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate that.
I'm never doing it again, Wendy.
We know. Yeah, there are tools for tonal matching, but to be honest, 90% of the time, just use your eyes. Look at it and see if it works. If you're really struggling, then you use the tools to help you. But otherwise, I know I did a whole thing on tools, but I never use them. The best way to put a shadow in
Yes.
is to find one with a bloody shadow.
Yeah.
Here you go. Here's one with a shadow.
Yeah.
That's where the shadow lives.
Yes.
That's the correct shadow. So let's just do a really, what time is it yet? A really quick and dirty, select subject. See how it does. There you go. That's on a quick select subject. And we can fly a mask to that plop. There we go. That is. Now it's thrown the shadow away, but it hasn't, because it's still there. All I've done is mask it.
Yeah.
So I've still got all that information there. So don't do a cutout on your layer, do a mask. Now let's stick this on the other picture. I'm going to do this the slightly different way. I've got the move tool, grab the layer, drag it up to the top, to the tab, and it selects the new picture. And then I can just bring it in and drop it on. So I'm going to chuck the Anna down, and here we go. We have, it's not that bad, it's a bit big. Let's just make him a bit smaller. I do a Control T just to bring him down a bit. There we go. Oops, too small there. There we go. So you just find what's roughly about the right sort of size. It's going to be a bit ropey, but in fact, I'm going to do that there. This, bring that up. There we go. Let's have him. He wants to be a bit bigger now, doesn't he? Now we actually see him sort of on the ground.
You've got to try and imagine how big the treads are, how big his feet are.
Yeah, there we go. Because you're putting him on a picture that has depth. So where you put him in that picture affects the perspective and the relative sizes. So when he was at the top of the steps, if he's up there, then he's huge. But down at the front, he's small. There's not really enough ground here to put the shadow in.
Pretend.
But we'll pretend. So let's just make him big. Oops, wrong one. Make the background a bit smaller. There we go. And pick him up. There we go. And just size him up. Sizes are always tricky to get just right. And this, yeah. I find it's an iterative process. You think you've got it right, and you come back to it the next day and think, shit, it's not the right size.
And can I say that's the absolute reason where you must use a smart object
Yeah.
to bring him in. Because if you resize him up and down, every time you resize him, you're losing quality.
Massively.
But if you brought a smart object in, you
Doesn't
don't lose
matter.
any quality
Yeah.
with your resizing.
So I'm going to say that's close enough for the minute. So let's see where the shadow should be. I've clicked on the mask. I've double clicked on it just to bring up this layer properties. I'm going to bring the density down. You see? Which lets me see where that shadow should be. And easy way is literally draw the damn thing in. You know, use a lasso. And let's just sort of draw the bugger in. You know, it's going to come around here, it's going to come around there somewhere and then disappear off around there, and it's going to be up there because that's a sticky up bit, and then follow it round there and down there and round here and down there and somewhere around there. That is, let's just take that little bit out of the middle. I'm using the keys to change. See how this changes here? I could go up here and just click on the subtract or the add. If I hold down the Alt key, it switches over to subtract. Hold down the Shift key, it goes to the add. So you can do the Shift, the Alt and the Shift anytime. And if you just have your fingers over those two keys, you can just switch between them anytime you want, and without having to think about what am I in. So I'm just going to hold Alt, and I'm just going to, you know, get rid of some of that round there. Now this is ignoring the fact that the lighting in the room is different to what he is, and you have to take that into account. I'm not doing it at the moment because we haven't got all week. So that gives some sort of a shadow to start with. So underneath him, this is one way of making a shadow. There are many other ways. I'm just going to do a solid colour. I'm going to make it black. There we go. And I'm just going to soften it a bit. I put a bit of a feather on it. Now that is one way of doing it. That is a quick and dirty. It's far too strong, so I'll bring the opacity down and look at it. Does it make sense? Because you can always paint on the damn mask. Get you. You're trying to darken it, so if you wanted, you could use multiply. It's not, you know, the multiply will intensify it, but because you're only using a fraction of it, there's not a lot of difference. If you are trying to paint the actual colour that's on there, then you need to multiply so that it blends with the background. Yeah, but yes, a blend mode would help. And that just gives you, let's turn that down a bit. Bring that up a bit. That gives you the start, and it is only the start. You would then decide on any fixes you need to do. So you might want to paint on there. Let's play that. Turn that down. Or you might just want to just give a little bit round there. You might want to give a bit over here as well, because it's going to be coming out there a bit. And then you need to look at the feet. Now you see where the cutout was. The cutout has actually cut round the shadow.
Yeah.
So that round there is the shadow that you want. That is the most important part of the shadow, because that is what grounds them. So really, you want to copy that, stick that on a new layer. You can have loads of layers in your shadows. So again, let's just I'm only doing a really, really rough one. So it's cut round there. So that's that shadow there, coming around here. Because it's underneath, it doesn't matter what shape it is underneath the thing. And it's going to go down there a little bit. Round there, round there. And we're into the fairly heavy shadow. Oops. Whoops! Whoops! I'll just get rid of that bit. There we are. It's behind, it doesn't matter. So again, I'm going to do the quick and dirty, stick it on a solid colour, black. Take it down a bit. Now you're not going to see anything because it's on top of the existing cutout. So I need to refine the cutout. So again, quick and dirty, let's just cut around his shoes. Oops. I'm using a magnetic lasso tool just for speed. Not that quick because there's not much difference. There's not much difference here between the two of them. There we go. And come around here. And once the contrast goes, then it stops seeing an edge. And I can't see where the damn edge is now. I haven't got a clue. So I'm just going to come over here and close it. Double click on it. I want to remove this from the mask because I don't want it on there. But I'm actually going to invert it. Shift, Control, I. That inverts the mask. The selection, I should say, not the mask. It inverts the selection. You won't have seen anything, but it has inverted it, hopefully. And I'm going to get my brush. I'm going to put it on black. And I'm going to paint over it. Let's turn these others off because it's confusing everything. Right, under. None locks off, that's why. Yeah, that helps. Right, I'm just going to paint over those. There we go. So that's just painted them off the mask there. Turn that back on. Control D deletes the selection. So then you have two. This one, you need a little bit of feather because it's not as hard as that, but not much. Little bit of a feather. You have to decide yourself how much feather you add to it and how much opacity you need to have it. It wants to be quite strong. Looking a bit ropey around here, but that is a very simple shadow. That didn't take long. Let's just grab everything. I want you, all those, and the background, and the move tool, and just drag them all down to make sure you've got all the relevant stuff in there. And then you have to refine it. You need to check on your selection to make sure that you've got the shoes selected properly. Quick way of doing that. Come here. Go away. That's it. Right. Quick way of doing that. Just apply a curves layer. Stick it to the. I'm just clipping it to the Piper layer, and let's just sort of whiz it up there. I don't care what it looks like. I just want to see the edge. There we go. And I can look at that now and think, well, it's still a bit ropey down there. The bottom of the shoe's not right. Let's fix it. So I can go onto here, get one of my masking tools. Again, I'm just using the very, in fact, I'm going to stick with that one.
And would you use a graphic saddle for this or a mouse?
So I'm a brick user, I'm sorry. I can't help it. I like bricks. Yep. This is, you know, I'm using a mouse now, and yeah, it's a bit cruder.
The only thing is I need a nice mouse mat because it slides too much on this table for
Yeah.
me, so it's about the control that you use.
It is, yeah. A pen tool, if you have that dexterity and that fine control, will make life massively easier. If you have that control. If you're like me and you use a brick, you haven't got that bloody control. So bricks do the job. Yes, that's right. Just sort of come in a bit closer. So you see that I've cut a little bit what I think is the a bit of the heel that I missed off before. Paint with white just to paint that in. Then invert, select black, and paint with that. And I buggered that up there, so let's just paint that back in. And when you're using a soft brush for doing this sort of thing, that's what you get, overspill. So I'm going to make that a hard brush, hold Alt, right click, hardness, softness, size. Left and right goes size, up and down, hardness and softness. So I want hard brush, small, get rid of the crap I've just put on, black, and carefully get rid of it. Do not, all of you, and I've seen the results of it, so I know you all do it, do not do this.
Oh, yes.
Don't do it. Do not do it. Do not cut out like that. It is instantly visible to everybody except you who's just done it. Everybody else knows exactly what you've done and where.
Even if you deny it.
Yes. There are a multitude of ways of getting around it. Now, you can do it the other way and use the shape, but it's dead easy to make a mess of it as well. Oops, like that. You see, you add extra bits where you don't want.
The new pen tool, the curved pen tool is wonderful.
Oh, there's lots of ways of doing. But you can, you know, if you have to use a brush, make sure that you're doing it on the inside, not on the outside. Do not do it on the outside. If you do it on the outside, correct your mess ups on the inside. Oh, there we go. So there's that fixed. Undo that. Zoom out. And because that's a curves layer, turn it off and it's gone. You know, I might actually want a bit of a curves layer on there, but I don't want that. So it's just bring that up a little bit, bring the shadows up a little bit. They do, nearly. There we go. Oops, go away. can't help it. Right, so there you are. It's crude and it does need finishing off. You would have, you look at it and you think, where else should a shadow be? His foot is hanging over the edge of the stair, so you would have some shadow underneath. But you've got a strong shadow immediately below the foot. And that's what does the grounding. The rest of the shadow has to look real. And if you can match the light sources, and if you have an actual shadow, copy the damn thing.
But if you haven't got a shadow,
Make it up.
make it up.
You can do it from the shape of the person. But the chances are the shape of the person is not the same shape as the shadow caused by that person. Be aware of that. Don't try to force it into it. It just needs to look right. And sometimes all it is literally get your brush and just paint it. Literally go, a bit of that there. Keep it soft.
And be aware of the lighting direction, because
Yes.
I've noticed on a few of the composites that have been made in the club, somebody will put a shadow under a foot and it'll be a big round pool of a shadow. And shadows are not like that. They're directional.
Yeah.
They depend on the direction of the light.
Yeah.
Look at real shadows. You know, in this room's wonderful because if you see somebody standing underneath one of those lights, you've got the perfect shadow to copy.
And that is another thing. Get another shadow from something else.
If you're photographic with like ray tracing, then you
And the further the shadow
If
goes
the
from
lights
the
are
object,
off, then
the
you let it
more
do
it's
more
more
could
blurred.
too much.
I'm sorry, Gary. The further the shadow is from the object, the more blurred it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and you even using this sort of really crude feathering, you can do it because you can blur it on using a grad. You can apply a gradient to it, and if you want the finer control, you can apply a gradient to another layer that will affect it by putting it in a group. So, for example, that I have a shadow that I'm happy with, not really, but say I'm happy with that shadow. I don't want to bugger that up. So what do? I put it in a group. Control G, it's in a group. I can now apply a mask to the group. I can now apply a gradient to that group mask, and that will mask what's in it as well. So I can have several levels. You can stack these up deeper than you could ever want. And you can apply different masks to each of them, which means you keep your original mask that you painstakingly built. You keep that untouched. You don't mess about with it again. Or apply your grad to there. So you might want to sort of say, like that's a bit drastic, that. But again, you've got tools here. You change the density of it. You have lots of tools for changing how things affect it. But that was the wrong way around anyway, so that's beside the point. Let's just swap those around there. Good. There we go. Right, that's better. That's a little bit more of a... So, you can still do that.
And then you can feather it.
Then you can feather it again.
Double
You can...
checking,
There are lots of things. Anything you can do to an image, you can do to a mask. The mask is just black and white. That's all it is. But anything else you can do to it. So you can soften it. You can blur it. You can mask the mask, which is what we've just done. that is probably as much time as we can do into this, because any more and the next stage is
Lesson on this one.
yeah. So hopefully that was vaguely useful to you. We didn't cover all questions.
But there's always another day.
Yes, there's always another day.
Or another cutout.
Yeah.
One last, if you now want to save that, you could come back to it.
Then you save it.
Save it as a PSD or
Yeah.
whatever.
Save it as a PSD,
Yeah.
or if it's big, a PSB.
Yeah.
You know, you can always save as a PSB regardless.
Yeah. Right.
So you save that. That's a PSB. That is.
Save it wherever. Yeah.
Don't be tempted to flatten all this lot,
No.
especially at this stage, because you come back tomorrow and have another look at it and you see the mess you've made. And sometimes that mess can be quite significant. But if you've got all your layers intact, and if you're really good and you label your layers up, not like I've done, then you know where things are and what they are. And you know, like you, don't be afraid of using groups. Groups are great. You can apply everything in a group. So you could actually put all that lot, him in a group all by himself. Keeps it all nice and neat together. And you know what it is. All works. Oops. I don't know why that didn't do it, but there we go. There we go. Right. Thank you so much for coming up tonight. We do appreciate you turning up. And hopefully you've enjoyed it. Or endured it. And
Both.
maybe learnt something. Maybe not.
Probably learned 10%. We've done well.
Well, you're not going to remember everything. You're not going to remember all the keystrokes. You're not going to remember all the fine details. Don't try to.
So we'll have it recorded and out.
I will generate this as a recording. It won't be this week, I do assure you. But I will put this on somewhere, assuming it's all worked, because
You turned off recording now.
not yet. I will do in the moment. So, thank you everybody for coming. Have a safe journey home. Headshots next week. Bring your cameras. Good night.